Welcome back. It is Wednesday, so we're going to start by moving all of the epoxy boards, which should be cured and ready for sanding now, into the sanding shed, and then we can move all of our poly boards back onto the glassing racks and do a poly pour before we start sanding the epoxies and prepping them for this afternoon. So if you've been following along with this series, you're probably starting to get a good idea of how things work at this stage, sort of spending the day essentially trying to pour as much poly resin as humanly possible on as many boards as humanly possible, and then making sure before we go home at the end of each day we do our epoxy pours to get that one step ahead. During the really busy summer season, I can have multiple batches of poly boards going at the same time. So right now we have a batch of 5 polys. I can probably do up to 8 with those horizontal racks, so I can pour resin on 8 boards at a time, and then I'm kind of out of rack space. So I could have in the summer 2 batches of 8 poly boards. So I'd be working on 16 polys each day, and then still making sure at the end of each day I'm doing my epoxy pour as well. So any ding repairer out there will tell you that the most commonly asked question from customers is, how long will the board take to repair? And that's a perfectly reasonable question. What I normally tell people is it'll take 10 to 14 days. That's usually a pretty safe estimate of time for either a poly or an epoxy board. It doesn't really matter which one. But of course that doesn't mean to suggest that it actually takes 10 to 14 days to complete the repair, but it may take me 5, 6, 7, 8 days to even begin your repair. Alright, so while we wait for that poly coat on all those boards to kick off, we're going to start prepping the epoxies for lamination, but before we do that, we're going to deal with this one. So first thing to check, of course, is there still water in here? Is it wet? So easiest way to start that, we'll just push on the foam with our finger, and yes, our finger comes out wet. So can't work on that, but I kind of knew that anyway. What I really want to do is deal with this crack that's in the rail of the board. It is the tiniest crack just to the left of my little mark there that I've put, but it is bleeding water. Every time I look at this board, there's just water pooling all around there and dripping off the bottom of the board. So we need to do something to that. The only thing we can really do is open it up to allow the water to escape, but we don't want to make a huge hole in the board because that's going to be a huge repair for us to fix. And that's about all we can do with the board right now. So we'll stick it back on that rack and just let it drip dry. Welcome to EPS foam. Generally speaking, in my workshop, I have roughly 8 racks that I can glass on at the same time. So with those horizontal racks there in the background and these 4 racks in the foreground here, I can resin coat or laminate 8 boards at a time. That depends on location of damage and all that type of stuff, but let's say for argument's sake, it's 8. There's always those customers that come in and they have a special circumstance. So maybe they're a backpacker who's only in town for 5 days, or maybe they're moving house, or maybe they're going on holiday or getting a new job and moving to a new city, and so they need their board before 10 to 14 days. Now, as it stands right now, we do have 2 available horizontal racks there. So if somebody brought a board like that in right now and they were in a hurry for it, well, we have the rack space, we can add it to this rotation. And whether we're doing sanding resin or laminating resin, we can start that sort of VIP board straight away and get it done as soon as possible. Now, a problem arises when there isn't available rack space. So let's say we're in the middle of summer, or we're in the middle of a really good swell, and we have 2 batches of poly resins on the go, 8 boards in each batch, so 16 total. The only way for me to slot this VIP board into a rotation is now to take somebody's board out of the rotation, and that person may have already waited 5, 6, 7 days for their board to get into the rotation to begin with, because remember, total time of return is 10 to 14 days. So they've waited almost a week for me just to begin repairing their board, and then they're waiting about 5 days for it to be finished. Now, the smallest, most simple ding that we can imagine, let's say we have a small hole about the size of our little fingernail that needs repairing. So a really simple small repair like that is going to have at minimum 4 stages to it. Stage 1 being to fill the hole, Stage 2 being to laminate it, Stage 3 being to resin coat it, and Stage 4 being to final sand and polish it. Now, if I had absolutely nothing else to do, with a poly board I could probably do all that in 1 day, and worst case scenario, maybe I get the whole thing poured and repaired, but I wait until the following day to do the final sand and polish, just so I know I'm not sanding and polishing sort of not fully cured resin, you know. But poly, you could do that in a day. Epoxy, on the other hand, is different because of the curing time. So the curing time of epoxy is 24 hours basically. So each one of those stages is 1 day. On day 1 we're going to fill it, day 2 we're going to laminate it, day 3 we're going to resin coat it, day 4 we're going to finish sand and polish it. So that's 4 days at a minimum to fix the simplest of dings. So if it takes 4 days to get to your board, and then it's going to be 4 days to do the actual repair, but then we might have a weekend or a public holiday or something in the mix of that. So now all of a sudden we're up to 10 days to repair your one epoxy board. So keep that in mind next time you're going to your local ding repairer and they tell you what their turnaround time is, or that they can't rush your board ahead, or maybe they said they could rush your board ahead but it's taking just a little bit longer than they said it would. Try to remember that your ding repairer is held captive by the curing time, the drying time of resin. They may be working on multiple boards at the same time, and every single one of the owners of those multiple boards all think that their board should have been ready 3 days ago. That's it, we are done for another day. So tomorrow we can come back and every single poly board is ready to sand and finish, except for this one, which will be ready to sand. It may need more resin coating on it. We'll see how it looks after I've sanded it. But even if it doesn't, we've still got some pinstriping to do on the other side. So we'll see how we get on with that. But all of the other polys should be ready to finish tomorrow. This epoxy should be ready to finish tomorrow as well. These two are going to need more resin, so they won't be. But unfortunately for my customers, my better half gets home from England tomorrow, so I need to do a super early morning surf, then drive to Auckland to go to the airport, pick her up, come back. So I'm going to have less than half a day of work tomorrow. So the priority will be pouring resin, and then it'll probably work out Friday. We'll get everything sanded, polished and out of here. We might get a few finished tomorrow, but likely Friday will be the big day. So I need to knock off half an hour early today so I can go home and clean the house before Maria gets home, and then I can tell her that it has been that clean the whole time she's been away. So until tomorrow, have a good evening and catch you later.
Few inches later.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Thursday. It is Small Kind Ding Repairs. Today has been a hell of a day. So it's actually 4:30 p.m. right now, I think, and I've just gotten back to work. So woke up 5:30 this morning, went for the Dawny surf. It was a paddle, not a surf. Did that and then left the house at 9 o'clock to go pick up my girlfriend from the airport, Maria, at 11 o'clock landing. She didn't end up getting out of the airport until about 12:30, 12:45. Had to make a stop on the way home to return a vacuum part that I didn't need. So I've just gotten back to work. So we're not going to get much done today, but the priority today is I'm going to finish the resistance board. So that's this one here. So we're going to final sand this, get it all done for the customer, because this board actually came in before I went to Australia. So we'll sort her out, and then we're going to prep these two epoxy boards, and we're going to pour epoxy. Most important thing to do every day, no matter what, bare minimum, pour your epoxy coats, because they take that 24 hours to dry and be sandable. So you can't make that up. And if you miss a day of coating, then your job is going to be a day delayed. Whereas with the poly boards, if I miss a pour today, for instance, I can probably make that up tomorrow. I just kick the resin a little bit faster, or use some UV resin even. We're lucky because there is no more poly to pour as far as we know. This one might take some more, but all the polys are ready to final sand and finish. So we'll have to do that tomorrow. And just an update where we drilled the holes. We are pissing water out of here, as you can see. So that's just going to take an age to dry out. Yeah, we're not in a rush on that one. While we finish off this board, I would like to say a big thank you to Manuela, Dirk and Seth. These three guys are the newest members to Small Kind Ding Repairs. All of them joined in the last week, so appreciate it very much, you guys. And how cool is this? There's so many members to the channel now that I can't even screen capture all of them in one shot. I have to break it up into two. So that's amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. It still trips me out that people watch these videos to begin with, let alone signing up as members to the channel. So about a month ago, I was surfing a local beach around here, and some guy out in the water kind of yelled out to me, "Oh, Small Kind Ding Repairs, how are ya?" And I'm not accustomed to that, because most people in this town who surf, I've repaired their surfboards. So people that I don't really remember, but ex-customers, are always saying hello, and I always just pretend to recognize them and say hello back. And so this guy yelled out, "Oh, Small Kind Ding Repairs, how are you?" And then he said, "Oh, you must get that a lot." And I kind of joked like, "Oh yeah, all the time. Come out to surf and people are like, 'Oh, why aren't you at work fixing my board?'" And then I realized a little bit, talking to him for a few minutes, that, oh, he's not a customer of mine. He watches my YouTube channel. Which is the first time that that's ever happened outside of the workshop. I have had some customers come in and say they found my videos, but this is the first time someone out in public recognized me from my YouTube channel. So that was kind of cool, but kind of weird at the same time. We had a little bit of a chat. He was a cool guy, and then I actually got 2 waves from him because he was sitting out a little deeper than I was, and so he just couldn't quite paddle into them, whereas I was in closer, so I could. And then on the third one, I sort of assumed the same thing would happen, and he would be sitting out too far. So I caught a wave, and I proceeded to drop in on this man. So if that was you out there at a place starting with T, and I had a yarn with you and then dropped in on you, I am sorry for that. And I didn't do it because I think I'm a YouTube celebrity. I did it because I don't know what I'm doing out there. Thank you for the wave though, and sorry about that. That is it, you guys. That was the shortest day ever. It is now 6:30 but the surface cleaned up, so we have our epoxy poured. We finished that one board for Auntie, so she should be able to surf in the morning, which she'll be happy with. Had this surf ski come in, so that's new today. A little crack on the rail at the back there. And then we had this Larry Bertelmann come in, which is pretty cool. But I want to go surf, so we'll have a closer look at that tomorrow, which will be Friday. A lot of poly boards to finish tomorrow.